we're seeing NVIDIA up about 7.5%, seeing Tesla up 8%. You're going to see a short covering, rocking rally. It's going to be green all day, just like that coat Dan has on.
The aforementioned Dan Ives right here with me in studio. So he picked out software. I want to ask you, we're talking about the Mag 7 and really mega cap tech. Who's the biggest beneficiary of this pause, at least in the near to medium term?
I mean, NVIDIA. Ultimately, if you look at this, I mean, they're going to be one, especially given the China tariffs that were, I think, most impacted. And, of course, we'll see what happens with the H20. But I agree with Jeff. I thought Jeff would actually be wearing a green jacket, too. If you look at the massive AI Palantir, you look at this AI revolution trade, ServiceNow, Salesforce. Look, this... If you're a tech investor, this is a dream scenario. No one thought this weekend would yield results like this. And that's why I believe new highs for tech, new highs for the market, they're now on the table with what we saw happen this weekend.
I post a quick daily stock market update every morning covering the latest stock market news to get you ready for the trading day ahead. Check it out on the channel if you want to stay on top of the news. I think you'll find it useful.
With NVIDIA in particular being told that it can't sell some of the chips that it had specifically marketed, the H20 chips are created for China production. I mean, we've gotten some relief on that lately, but this is an issue that keeps coming back to the forefront. How would you anticipate this plays out?
Well, that's right. The Trump administration thus far has taken a relatively tough line on the export controls that limit the sale of these advanced chips, as well as chip-making tools to China. Right now, there's a debate in the White House about the next step around what's called the AI diffusion rule, which was a Biden-era rule that not only limited chip sales to China, but also to third countries that might then re-export them to China, like the Middle East or Southeast Asia. And right now, the White House is debating how strict their replacement of this rule should be. And I think there's still open questions in the administration about what type of path they want to take. But it's clear they're going to do something to replace this rule, because you can't have a situation in which you've got bans on sales of chips to China, but open sales of chips to third countries that will then sell them onwards to China. And so we're going to still end up with I think a relatively restrictive environment around sales of these specialized AI chips to make sure that too many of them don't fall into the hands of Chinese companies.
The entire market breathed a massive sigh of relief on news of a de-escalation in U.S.-China trade. The U.S. has announced a 90-day pause to the tariffs, with the U.S. dropping their tariff rate on China down to 30% and China dropping their tariff rate on the U.S. down to 10%. Now, when it comes to NVIDIA, market participants will shift their focus to two things in the immediate term: what will replace the AI diffusion rule, and secondly, the upcoming semiconductor tariffs. The administration has said that these tariffs will be non-negotiable, and based on recent comments, I think we're likely to get the reveal of the semiconductor tariffs sometime in the near future. Possibly even this month. I would not be surprised to see NVIDIA, TSMC, and other semiconductor stocks trade lower on the initial reveal of the tariffs, so be prepared for that, just in case. The good news for NVIDIA is that TSMC has already started manufacturing of NVIDIA's Blackwell at their Arizona facility. As for the diffusion rule, we don't know what specifically will replace it, so be on the lookout for any announcements about that in the near future. Now let's get back to the clips, and I'll share some important NVIDIA news after that.
We've not talked NVIDIA.
No, we haven't.
Right.
You've been back. We haven't spoken in a while, and we hadn't mentioned NVIDIA until the 36-minute mark. Stock's up 4+%, along with, obviously, this big rally we're seeing in so many of the big tech names as well.
I thought of you when the cup and handles. What cup and handles situation.
What are your thoughts, Jim?
Well, we thought of you, by the way, when Lisa was with us on Thursday,
last week,
Friday?
And I liked her numbers, and she's got a lot of good things happening, and I think that there's been this, she's been crushing, I do believe in Intel, but she's just running the table. She's running the table in the PC business.
AMD is.
Yeah, and that's fantastic. Her GPU business is very good. Her gaming business is great. People counted her out. That's at your own peril. Don't count her.
Let's not forget NVIDIA. So what are your thoughts? Okay. By the way, on NVIDIA, you've still got the 232 investigation on national security in terms of chips. You've still got the replacement of this diffusion rule. So it's unclear what they're really ever going to be allowed to sell into the Chinese market, if anything.
No, that's true.
And to other countries.
But I think there is a belief that it's a better situation than it was under the Biden rules. You could add a few more friends added. Mexico could be added. Israel could be added. But what I like, they've got Jensen's going to be speaking at this upcoming conference. But what I like about this is that they actually have a lot of China business. Right. Maybe there's something that there's something there. It had been given up on. I'm quietly optimistic that the stock has broken out. But one of the things that makes me most optimistic, there has been a total changeover of share base.
Right.
People who are in it now actually know what NVIDIA is. They don't think it's NVIDIA like a hand cream.
They know how to pronounce it.
They know how to pronounce it.
Yeah.
I saw a piece from the Semiconductor Industry Association where it was still mispronounced. I mean, but I think that Jensen's got some things up his sleeve. I really like the stock. I'm not changing my view that this is now at 24 times earnings just doesn't make any sense. This is different from Google, which yes, indeed, has got a multiple contraction going.
Can I come back to NVIDIA for a second? Wait, where are you in that, though? I thought you actually...
I had to make the position smaller. I was the NVIDIA fund.
Right.
And it didn't justify, given the fact that I felt that the administration felt that NVIDIA was not necessarily a good actor.
Right.
Something has changed that Jensen Huang has been able to somehow convince the president that it is good, as I think it is, to have NVIDIA be ascendant worldwide.
Yep.
And then not pull back. And that had been like this perspective of, listen, let's just cut our nose off to spite our face. Let's make sure the Chinese get nothing, but not make NVIDIA become this worldwide leader. And I think that NVIDIA's been playing by the rules endlessly and has not helped them. Maybe this is the beginning of the next run for NVIDIA.
Yeah.
AI is still one that's been off the charts. I mean, like, investors have been worried about an AI capex peak. I'd say investors are really the only ones that have been worried. The companies that are actually out there spending the money, they don't seem to be worried. In fact, CapEx budgets have still been going up. So AI demand at least still looks really, really robust.
So that's an amazing encapsulation. Where then does that leave you on the space? We mentioned that you're overweight NVIDIA, kind of neutral on AMD. Just walk us through. I mean, where do you see the best opportunity right now?
You bet. So I've liked the AI names. I felt that the actual, whereas for a lot of these other end markets, people were really worried about what's going to happen in the second half and is demand real or not. AI demand, I think, is real. I also think the AI hardware, if tariffs are implemented, is somewhat insulated because most of the AI servers come into the U.S. through Mexico. They're USMCA compliant and they're tariff free. So I actually like AI. AMD, I've been lukewarm. Look, it's about the same valuation as NVIDIA. Like, why not own NVIDIA instead of AMD? I don't have to argue with myself about, like, is there demand or not for their products.
Well, we have a news alert on a potentially big semiconductor sale. Christina Partsinevelos has the details for us. Hi, Christina.
Hi, Morgan. Well, the United States has been negotiating a deal that could send U.S.-designed AI chips, mostly NVIDIA chips, to an Emirati AI firm. And this is according to a New York Times report specifically about the Emirati firm. They would be sold to G42, which is an Emirati firm that has been scrutinized in the past for its ties to China. The report points out that the talks inside the Trump administration have created some tensions, some who want to close the deal before President Trump continues his trip around the Middle East, and then also those that are concerned about security and worried that the technology could be misused by the Emiratis. The Trump administration, though, is also looking to cut deals, direct deals specifically for AI chips with officials all across the Middle East, and especially as it looks to strengthen U.S. ties in the region. I am expecting some type of a deal or announcement, some type of news coming with Saudi Arabia, and perhaps that could come from NVIDIA's CEO tomorrow morning. Jensen Huang is going to be speaking at a U.S. Saudi investment forum in the AM. But what this tells us is that the U.S. government is slowly opening up the market, which could be seen as a major positive strength for not only NVIDIA, but other custom chip makers like Broadcom or Marvell as well.
There are two news items I want to mention really quick. First, Jensen Huang is scheduled to speak Tuesday at the Saudi-U.S. Investment Forum. The president is also visiting the Middle East, and we could potentially see countries' access to NVIDIA's chips be used as leverage in trade negotiations. So be on the lookout for any developments there. Also today, DigiTimes is reporting that NVIDIA has raised prices of its products across the board by as much as 10 to 20%. The report claims that NVIDIA faces substantially greater costs as a result of moving Blackwell production to TSMC's new plant in Arizona. This news is yet another reason why I think NVIDIA's margins will be one of market participants' main focuses on NVIDIA's May earnings report. As I mentioned in recent videos, one potential positive of the restriction of H20 sales to China is that we could see NVIDIA's margins move higher as a result. This is because NVIDIA's margin on the H20 is estimated to have been the range of 50%, which is much lower than NVIDIA's average margin in the 70% range. At the same time, there were reports just last week saying that NVIDIA is developing a modified version of the H20 so that they can continue selling to Chinese companies. And now we have this report from DigiTimes about NVIDIA raising prices. devices. With all of these topics in mind, NVIDIA's margins and margin guidance will be a key point of focus on this specific earnings report. NVIDIA leadership told us on the company's last earnings call that margins would dip into the low 70s this quarter as they spend money to expedite the manufacturing of Blackwell, and then margins would return to the mid-70s later this year. Any changes to that guidance, whether good or bad, will have an important impact on NVIDIA stock. We know NVIDIA will incur a charge of roughly $5.5 billion on this earnings report due to the H20 restriction, which is a negative. At the same time, if NVIDIA's outlook includes higher than expected margins, then that could be a very big positive on this earnings report. I would say I'm currently neutral as we head into NVIDIA's earning on the 28th. Originally, I was very optimistic about this earnings report as I expected Blackwell earnings to show up on the balance sheet in a substantial way. Then my view of this specific earnings report turned negative when we got the news of the $5.5 billion charge for the quarter. But then I realized that an H20 restriction could ultimately result in higher gross margins for NVIDIA. And so all things considered, at the current moment, I am neutral regarding this specific earnings report. I'm not overly optimistic and I'm not overly pessimistic. I'm just neutral about this specific earnings report. That's my view in the short term. But from a long-term perspective, I am still very optimistic about NVIDIA's future. Demand for AI is still extremely strong, given what we just heard from all of the hyperscalers, as well as what we've heard recently from companies like OpenAI, xAI, Perplexity, and many others. NVIDIA still maintains a strong competitive moat across the entire stack, and companies still receive a 40x in their AI factory revenue when they upgrade to Blackwell equipped with NVIDIA Dynamo. With strong demand, a competitive moat, and significant performance offerings to customers, I'm still very optimistic about the long-term future of NVIDIA, and I think the company's best days are ahead. At least that's my view on the situation. Remember to stay calm in this market. Remember to maintain a long-term perspective, and do not make any hasty or irrational decisions. With all of that being said, I hope you all have a great rest of the day, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts about NVIDIA in the comments below. Please leave a like on this video so more people will see it. And while you're down there, please consider subscribing. It's free, and you can always change your mind. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.